So let's talk teaser for a little bit. Forgive the lack of imagery that's going to be in this video. There aren't a whole lot of art pieces for this particular species as of yet. There will be enough in the book for you guys to really get an accurate idea of how they feel. But for now, we're going to stick with the few that I've got available. So what is this? This is not a wallaby. I think I've heard that a few times so far. This is a cogsune. This is a species that was not talked about in the core rulebook and has an interesting place in the lore in HSD, which I don't want to give too much away from just yet because that's part of the fun of reading it. Suffice it to say, they're a rather secretive bunch, and they have been squirreled away, or not squirreled, as the case may be, for some time now, developing technology of their own, which is of frightening and substantial power. And they introduce a new way to kind of play in the HSD universe. So when you think about cogs and you think about what they do for the game, they do introduce a new playable race, but for the most part they're on par with vectors. They work a little bit differently, their movement is different, their bodies are shaped differently, and there's lots of different roleplay and culture opportunities for them. But they are designed to be equal contributors to your overall party. You can have a vector, you can have a cog, and they're both going to do about the same thing. They use the same equipment and operate on about the same level of robustness. A cogsune, on the other hand, is a totally different creature. It's definitely a supporting creature. It uses a unique set of rules specifically designed for itself, and it's more designed to be a action multiplier, I guess you'd call it, than a general contributor to a party. It makes for a great stand-in. It makes a really good character for people who don't get a chance to play on a weekly basis. They just drop in every once in a while. You know, you've got that friend that can only come in once a month or so and really wants to play but can't keep maintain character. Cogsunes are great for that. Within their own lore, they come in and out of situations and disappear on a whim. They have all sorts of different features for enhancing combat, enhancing standard situations. They can do really bizarre things with technology, and with the general rule set of the game, they can multiply hit points, they can multiply armor values, they can change the way terrain works, they can manipulate all sorts of stuff. Their actual ability to deliver immediate damage is severely curtailed. They're tiny, they're only 2 feet tall. They count as micros by default. They also have very low strengths. They're designed to exist in very low gravity situations. They don't have the vector ability to adjust to high gravity situations, so even the strong ones aren't very strong. They can use weaponry, but no more effectively than any vector can. Their primary job is to really just change the way you think about your combat situations and about your action situations, because they can do weird things with reality. This is a pretty big deal for combat, but combat mechanics aside, I really like what this does from a role-played standpoint, because it gives you a sort of new way to deal with the idea of scientific terror. A lot of the things in the HSD universe are kind of commonplace, stuff that you would normally expect to see in a high-tech environment that the vectors are all pretty used to. The only ones that kind of squick them are things like replacing your entire body by teleporting from world to world. That bothers a lot of people, and a few other things too. But there's a lot of high science things that we would normally go, oh, wait a minute, this is getting into a weird area, that they don't bat an eye at. Cogsunes have technology that's proprietary to them, that no vector has really experienced before. So when it hits them, it's very worrying, because vectors come from this area of philosophy where they think they know everything that's going on in terms of science. They started with a very strong scientific background, and over the past 700 years they've only gotten better at it. So they think they're pretty on the ball about how the universe works. So when something shows up that has this technology that's doing things they can't explain and is doing it with relative ease, it's very troubling to them, especially when it starts causing effects to them personally. For instance, one of the abilities that the Cogsunes has is to drastically increase the hit points of characters that are around them. And that's neat from a combat standpoint, right? But when you consider the reality of that, what's actually happening when you can hold a grenade in your hand and not lose your entire body when it blows up? You can survive it. That does weird things physically. Does it flay the flesh on your hand? Does it expose the bone? Are you alive but injured? How do you react to this kind of new resilience? And furthermore, how is that used against you psychologically or for you psychologically? Do you start not fearing death anymore, or do you become intrinsically afraid of not being natural anymore? Do you think you might become addicted to that ability? Would that be a sort of a new thrill that a character would want to have over and over again, where they could just take things that should normally blow them out of the water and endure them? Or would this be something that's terrifying to them, where they're taking bullets and not dying, but they're getting hurt? They're still feeling the impacts, feeling everything that's going into it. Is this some fresh new hell they don't necessarily want to experience? Would they resent the cogsune? And what happens when the cogsune leaves? Because they all inevitably do. So there's all sorts of these fun ideas that you can use beyond just the mechanics that the cogsune adds to your combat experience. And that's where I think players are going to find the most fun with them.